job ad was posted at exactly 12:01 a.m. I wasn't looking for work, just couldn't sleep. But something about the title caught me. Night Staff Wanted, the 6th Light Hotel. No address, no contact info, just a set of strange instructions. Be standing on the corner of Ashwood and Holloway by 11:59 p.m. Do not arrive early. Do not arrive late. Bring no electronics, no watches, no questions. The hotel appears promptly at midnight and closes at 6. If you make it to morning, you will be paid in full. It read like a creepypasta written by an AI, but I clicked apply anyway. All I had to submit was a name and a headshot. I used a selfie I'd taken 2 years ago. Hit send. 2 minutes later, I got an email reply. Welcome, night attendant. Your shift begins tonight. You'll be working the front desk. Do not leave it. Do not greet the guests unless they greet you first. Pay will be received upon successful departure. That was it. No confirmation form. No interview. Still, I showed up because something in me wanted to believe it wasn't real, and another part of me was terrified it was. Ashwood and Holloway intersected in a dead part of town. Empty storefronts, boarded buildings, not even a gas station. But I was there by 11:58 p.m. as instructed, and right on time, the world changed. It was subtle at first. The air got colder. My phone, despite being turned off, vibrated once and went black. The screen cracked from the inside out. Then the fog rolled in. Thick, gray, alive. It spilled through the alleyways and curled around my shoes. And when the church bell at Holloway struck midnight, the hotel was just there. The 6th Light Hotel. 6 stories tall. Gothic and weathered. It looked like something from a black and white photograph, the kind you find tucked behind a mirror at an estate sale. A man stood in front of the tall glass doors. He wore a crimson uniform that shimmered strangely, like it was stitched with thread stolen from theater curtains. He held a clipboard and a brass key. When I got closer, I noticed he wasn't breathing, not holding his breath. Just not breathing. "You're the new attendant," he said, right on time. He didn't ask for a name, didn't explain the job. He simply handed me the clipboard and the key. The tag read, "Lobby Station, Do Not Abandon." Then he pointed at the hotel behind him and said only, "They've been expecting you." The lobby doors opened by themselves. Inside, the hotel was already alive. Candles flickered in sconces on the wall. A string quartet played from somewhere unseen, and overhead, a chandelier glowed with an unsettling light, like something halfway between moonlight and bone marrow. I stepped in and felt watched instantly, not by cameras, by the hotel itself. It was like the walls were full of lungs, breathing me in. The desk sat near the center of the lobby. Ancient oak, polished but nicked with age. On top was a guest book, open, with dozens of names already written in flowing red ink. None had arrival times, only a column labeled Departure, and each one was filled with the same word, pending. Even more unsettling, my name had already been written at the bottom, in my own handwriting, and beside it, Departure TBD. The clock on the wall ticked once, loud and echoing, 12:08 a.m. I settled behind the desk, tried to act calm, but every shadow in that place felt too thick, the kind that curves when you look directly at it. At 12:15 a.m., the first guest arrived. She came from the grand staircase, gliding, not walking, tall, pale, wrapped in a dress made of what looked like funeral veils. Her face was hidden behind a sheer white covering. She held a silver tray with a teacup, filled to the brim with something black and swirling. She paused at the front desk, tilted her head. "Does he still stay in room 405?" she asked. I tried to speak. She lifted a gloved finger to her lips. "Shh," she whispered. "The walls are sleeping." Then she walked away, vanished into the east corridor. I turned back to the guest book. Her name was now scrawled just above mine. Lady in White, arrival, ongoing departure. Unlisted. I leaned back in the chair, felt something shift under the cushion. I reached down and pulled out a torn envelope. No postage, no name. Inside was a single sheet of faded paper. "You're not the first. The hotel always replaces what it devours. If the chandelier flickers 3 times, do not look up. And if the elevator opens with no one inside, shut it immediately. Do not let it speak." The candle nearest me went out. A soft click echoed through the lobby. The elevator at the far end had opened on its own. Inside, nothing. Just a faint, raspy voice from within. "Attendant." The voice from the elevator was not human. It was trying to sound human, raspy, calm, polite, but there was a delay between the syllables, like a bad audio file buffering. "Attendant," it said again, this time a little louder. "Will you be joining me?" I stayed frozen behind the desk. The key on the velvet ribbon around my neck burned hot against my chest, like it didn't want to be near that voice. I looked at the paper again, the warning I'd found tucked into the desk cushion. Do not let it speak. I was already too late. The elevator doors remained wide open. The space inside was dark, but not empty. Something shimmered faintly in the corner, like fingers, long and thin, tapping the metal walls, waiting. The lights above the elevator flickered once, then again, and then a third time. That's when I remembered another rule. If the chandelier flickers 3 times, do not look up. Too late. My eyes darted upward before I could stop them, and what I saw wasn't the chandelier. Not anymore. It had changed. Its glass arms now sagged downward like the limbs of a drowned body, twisted and cracked. Wax dripped in reverse, rising from the floor toward the bulbs, and suspended just above me, coiled in the metal frame like a spider in its web, was a figure, naked, gray, grinning. Its mouth was stitched, yet I could hear it laughing. The laughter echoed inside my bones. I blinked hard, and the vision vanished. The chandelier returned to normal. So did the elevator. The voice was gone. But a soft bell chimed once more from inside the elevator car. It was waiting. I pressed the old brass button behind the desk marked Service Lock. A heavy thunk echoed through the lobby, and the elevator doors finally began to close. Before they shut completely, I saw something crawl upward from the floor inside. It had no face, just skin stretched where features should have been. It waved at me with my own hand. Then the doors sealed. 1 a.m. Only 1 hour had passed, and already I could feel the hotel changing me, or maybe remembering me. I lit another candle. The flames offered no warmth, but they gave a sense of order. I kept glancing at the guest book. Lady in White's entry was still there, but now new names had appeared, in rows, scrawled in a red that looked too dark, too thick to be ink. Man in blue. Arrival, intermittent. The hollow guest. Arrival, circumstantial room, 506, active since 1893. No departure times, just that word again, pending. I heard soft footsteps descending the grand staircase, not human footsteps. The rhythm was off, like someone walking on all fours with shoes on only their front hands. I didn't look up, not right away, but eventually curiosity, stupid, dangerous curiosity took over. I looked. There was no one on the stairs, only muddy, wet footprints forming one at a time as they descended. When they reached the lobby floor, I held my breath. The footprints crossed the marble floor and stopped at the front desk, right in front of me. A pressure built in the air, like something massive and invisible was looming inches from my face. Then, the guest book flipped a page by itself. Ink began to scrawl across the new page on its own. Letter by letter, he is in the walls now. You let him speak. I wanted to run, but the moment the thought formed, the lobby doors behind me sealed shut. Not with chains, not with locks, they just disappeared. Replaced by a stretch of blank wallpaper with a floral pattern I hadn't seen before. And I realized the hotel wasn't keeping me here. It was replacing exits behind me, one by one. The walls groaned softly, like they were full of lungs, breathing in my fear, feeding on it. I picked up the service phone beside the guest book. It had no dial tone, but when I held it to my ear, I heard whispering, "How many rooms have your name? How many versions of you are already sleeping? Would you like us to show you?" I slammed it down. The lobby lights dimmed. Every candle flickered. And then, from the far hallway near the east wing, a child's laughter. Soft at first, then louder. I stepped around the desk, walked carefully toward the sound. The floor stretched with each step. More hallway than there should have been. And, in the distance, I saw her. A little girl in a faded yellow dress standing with her back to me. Her shadow reached the entire length of the corridor. She turned her head slowly. "You work here now," she said softly. Then she smiled. But her face wasn't hers. It was mine. But young. Too young. 12 years old, just like in that photo I'd used for my school ID, the one I hadn't seen in years. And I knew, without knowing how, that that photo was hidden in this hotel. Somewhere. Waiting. The girl's smile widened. "Room 507 is ready now," she whispered. "He's already in the bed." Then she turned and vanished into the wallpaper, like she'd never been there at all. Behind me, the elevator rang again, but this time it didn't open. Instead, a soft knock echoed through the walls, from inside the desk. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The knock wasn't loud, just a dull thud, like a hand pressed gently, almost politely, against the inside panel of the front desk. I backed away slowly, watched the wooden front, heard it again. 2 knocks, then 3, then silence, until I bent down, and from the seam at the base of the desk, I heard a voice, so faint it sounded like breath pressed through wet cloth. "It's your turn in the drawer." I dropped the guest book, stumbled back into the candle rack, knocking 2 of them over. The flames sputtered on the marble floor but didn't spread. The wax just soaked into the grout like the building was drinking it. A low hum filled the lobby. It vibrated in my teeth like when a train passes underground. But there were no subways here, just tile, bone, and secrets. I crouched, pressed my ear to the wooden paneling at the base of the desk. No more knocking, but something moved. Inside, sliding, breathing, waiting. I fumbled for the small brass key hanging on the velvet ribbon around my neck. When I first arrived, it was labeled Lobby Station, Do Not Abandon. But now that label had changed. Now it simply read Drawer. I didn't want to open it. I knew I shouldn't. But the hum grew louder. The candles all dimmed at once. And somewhere upstairs, a piano began playing 3 low, discordant notes over and over again. The key was burning hot, demanding. So I unlocked the drawer. It was deeper than it should have been. A single pull extended nearly a foot past the back of the desk, like the wood had folded space inward. Inside was a face, mine, pressed flat against the back wall of the drawer, eyes open, mouth stretched in a scream I couldn't hear. The face blinked once, then its lips moved. "You left me here," it mouthed. "Don't leave again." I slammed the drawer shut so hard it echoed like a gunshot. The chandelier above me hissed, each crystal arm twitching slightly, like spider legs readjusting their grip. I staggered to my feet, looked around the lobby. Everything had changed again. Now, the walls were breathing, not metaphorically, literally. The wallpaper pulsed in and out, every 2 seconds, like a heartbeat, or lungs. The air was thicker, heavy with mildew and something sweeter, something that reminded me of rotten peaches. A new name had been added to the guest book: drawer copy, arrival, recurring departure. Bound, and beneath it, in smeared red script, "The drawer never forgets." 1:47 a.m. I tried the front door again. Of course it wasn't a door anymore. Now it was a mirror, framed in wood, silver-backed, and, in the reflection, the lobby looked the same. Same desk, same chandelier, same candles. But I wasn't in it. Someone else stood at the desk, wearing my uniform, smiling, watching the mirror, and writing in the guest book. I tapped the glass. The reflection looked up, eyes pitch black, and mouthed a word I couldn't hear, until it wrote it down: "Stay." Behind me, the elevator dinged once more, but the doors didn't open. Instead, a letter slid out from between them. Just a plain envelope, no name. I picked it up, hands trembling. Inside was a single Polaroid, grainy, overexposed. It showed me, sleeping, in a bed that wasn't mine, in a room I'd never seen. My wrists were bandaged, a mirror was cracked behind the headboard, and written on the back in faded ink, "Room 507, don't wake up. Not yet." I turned to find the east wing corridor completely gone. Now it was just a hallway of doors, hundreds of them, all shut, all numbered wrong, minus 1.4 B.000, all glowing slightly around the frames, and in front of one of them, standing motionless, was a boy. Couldn't have been older than 10, bowl haircut, too thin limbs, shirt soaked in something dark and wet. He looked up at me and smiled with a mouth full of needle points. "Don't you remember being me?" he whispered, then vanished. Only his wet footprints remained, leading to a door labeled "Copy Room." The guest book flipped a page by itself again. New ink bled into the parchment like veins under skin. Room 507, status, preoccupied drawer copy, status, discontent night attendant, condition, fragile. I returned to the desk. The phone rang. Once, I answered. The line crackled. Then, "You've forgotten too much already. You're not supposed to remember the drawer. Prepare for room 405. He'll come down soon." Click. I turned to the staircase. A shadow had appeared halfway down, not descending, just standing, still, watching, and beside it, a new candle had appeared on the railing, literature flickering blue, dripping wax that formed the word "Return." I checked the guest log. Room 405's entry had updated. Mr. Keene, arrival, continuous. Departure. Text slowly writing itself in real time. Overdue. And beneath it, "Do not let him speak in his voice. If he asks for the key, do not give it to him." The flame on my desk candle flared suddenly. The drawer rattled again, and from somewhere upstairs, 3 knocks, heavy, slow, as if from inside the walls. The knocks echoed through the bones of the hotel, not from a door, not from the staircase, but within the walls, each one deeper than the last. like someone was dragging a coffin down a tunnel lined with ribs. The guest book pages fluttered violently, then went still. I looked down. Mr. Keen's entry had updated again. Arrival, continuous departure, denied condition, vocal mimicry. Detected beneath it, in a different handwriting, one I hadn't seen before, tighter, aggressive, almost etched. Don't answer if he sounds like you. He only needs one yes. A cold wind pushed through the lobby then. Not a breeze, a push. It knocked 2 candles over, snuffing them out. The chandelier above began to sway, groaning softly as if trying not to break apart. I turned slowly toward the grand staircase. Mr. Keen stood halfway down. He wore a charcoal suit that shimmered with water stains. One shoe, no tie. His face was mostly hidden under a wide-brimmed hat, but I could see his mouth, wide, stretched in a grin he didn't seem to control. His lips moved, but the voice that came out was mine. I need the key. You forgot to check me out. I stepped back instinctively. The key around my neck, once warm, had gone ice cold. The ribbon tightened, tugging slightly toward him like it wanted to move. Give it to me, Mr. Keen said again in my exact tone, down to the cadence and inflection. I've earned it. I opened the drawer, not the one he came from, the real one, the small drawer in the desk. I reached inside, hoping for something, anything. My fingers touched something smooth, a photo. I pulled it out. It was a black and white picture of Mr. Keen, or someone who looked like him, standing in the same hotel lobby, same front desk, but the timestamp at the bottom read February 17th, 1903, and next to him, in the photo, was a bellhop slumped over, dead, face missing, burned off or mimicked. I flipped the photo over, scrawled on the back, "He takes what he hears. Don't let him hear too much." I placed the photo back inside the drawer and slammed it shut. When I turned around, Mr. Keen had taken another step down, still grinning, still wearing my voice, but now it changed slightly, more nasal, like me when I'm exhausted. It's not fair, you know. I did my time. I made it to 6. They just kept me because no one told me the rules. My heart thundered. The elevator dinged. For once, it didn't open. Instead, a sheet of paper slid out between the doors. It drifted down like falling ash. I picked it up with shaking fingers. The 6th guest never leaves. If Keen leaves, he becomes you. The candles began to flicker wildly. The chandelier made a cracking sound. I could hear whispers in the wallpaper. Not words, just breath. Hundreds of breaths all around me, overlapping like a rotten choir. I turned back to the staircase. Mr. Keen was gone. Only the echo of his last footstep remained. But the voice came again, this time directly behind me. I'll take the key now. I didn't move. I didn't turn. I reached for the bell under the desk and rang it once. A low, metallic tone filled the room. Everything froze. Even the shadows stopped shifting, and a new voice whispered from the floorboards, "Key denied. Reset initiated." The chandelier groaned again, then snapped. It didn't fall. Instead, it turned upside down, became a spiral staircase, one that extended upward through the ceiling like a helix made of light and bone. The walls twisted, the room inverted, and Mr. Keen screamed. Not in my voice this time, but in 1,000 others. Children, women, men, all of them overlapping into one deafening shriek. He vanished mid-step. The sound cut out. The hotel sighed, and the chandelier staircase slowly folded itself back into glass and crystal, like nothing had happened. The guest book flipped again. A new line appeared. Mr. Keen, Transferred location, storage wing. B status, quiet for now. I stood motionless for a long time, just breathing, just trying to remember which parts of me were still mine. Then, the phone rang. I picked it up without thinking. The voice was flat, emotionless. "Good work, night attendant. Please log session 4, violation contained. You are now eligible to request a break. Do you wish to enter the staff lounge?" I didn't answer, but the wall behind the desk creaked open anyway, a sliding panel revealing a narrow hallway lined with red velvet wallpaper. The floor glistened as if freshly mopped, and at the end, a wooden door marked only "Lounge." The phone clicked, and I realized I didn't remember dialing. I didn't remember picking this job, and worst of all, I didn't remember ever wanting to leave. The hallway behind the desk was wrong. The dimensions didn't make sense. It stretched too far, bent in ways my eyes couldn't hold. Every few steps, the floor slanted upward, then down again, like walking through a house designed by a mad architect with a warped sense of gravity. The walls were lined with velvet, but not fabric velvet, living velvet. It pulsed like skin. The patterns shifted under my hand when I brushed them, forming symbols I didn't recognize, sigils that faded the moment I blinked. And far down the corridor stood the door to the staff lounge, a thick wooden thing with brass hinges and no handle, just a slit at eye level, like a prison cell. It was open, just a crack, and from within the sound of breathing. I almost turned back, almost. But then the door spoke, not with words, with sound. The wood creaked in a rhythm too steady to be random, like a heartbeat, one slow thump at a time. Thump, 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 calling me, daring me, and the key around my neck? It had changed again, now etched with a symbol I didn't recognize, and beneath it a tag that read, "Lounge, temporary access, do not sit." I pushed the door open. The room beyond was lit in red, dim, smoky. A single chandelier hung upside down, its bulbs replaced with flickering candles. The furniture looked antique, Victorian chairs with clawed feet, long divans, ashtrays full of crushed bones. At the center of the room was a table, and sitting around it, the staff. There were 5 of them, all dressed in variations of the burgundy uniform the doorman had worn on my first night. Each had a name tag, though I couldn't read them. The tags blurred when I tried. Some of the staff had no eyes, others had too many. One had a long, stitched mouth that stretched down his neck. They didn't speak, just watched, and gestured to the final empty chair. It had my name on it, carved into the wood. But I remembered the rule. Do not sit. I stepped closer anyway, peered at the table. Cards were laid out in front of each of them. Tarot, number. They were hotel keys. Each key pulsed with a faint heartbeat, except mine. Mine was still, cold. The stitched-mouthed staff member pushed it toward me. "Your shift is long," he rasped. "The chair remembers." I didn't move. "Not tired yet," I muttered. They all tilted their heads at the same time, as if confused. Then the chandelier above us screamed. The flame inside each candle flared upward into blue light, and the room shuddered. Walls throbbed, floorboards bent. The stitched-mouthed staff member hissed, slammed both palms on the table, and from the wall behind him, a shadow slipped loose. It wasn't a person. It was a replacement. A silhouette shaped like me, made of mist and mirror fragments. It wore my uniform, held the same brass key, and when it opened its mouth, my voice came out. "Go sit down," it said softly. "You look exhausted." Then it walked toward the chair. I backed away. "I'm not part of this," I said. "I'm not." The stitched-mouth staff member raised one long finger and traced something into the air, a symbol that hovered between us, glowing. It pulsed once, and the walls shifted again. Now I was back in the hotel lobby, just like that, as if I'd never left, only something was different. The desk had 2 chairs now, and the other one, it was already occupied, by me, but not quite. This version of me didn't blink, didn't breathe. He just sat there, smiling faintly, hands folded, waiting. The guest book was open again, and written at the bottom of the page, attendance split, copy on standby. Next guest, room 507, escort required. I leaned over the desk. The copy didn't react. Not until I said, "What are you?" Then it slowly looked up at me and answered, "You, when you sit down." I grabbed the key from around my neck, trying to tear it off, but it wouldn't budge. Instead, the ribbon cinched tighter, and the desk bell rang by itself. A low, slow ding. The elevator doors opened, and inside, a figure, wrapped in gauze, eyes leaking black tears. It didn't move, just waited, holding a hotel key with the number 507. The phone rang once. I answered. The voice was hollow, static-wrapped. "Escort the guest to room 507. You'll know what to do once you see the room." Click. I turned back to the elevator. The gauze-wrapped guest stepped out, moved like its joints weren't connected correctly. Each motion delayed, disjointed. It walked past me, paused, then turned its head sideways, bones cracking as it moved. "Coming," it whispered, not in English, but I understood anyway. The copy of me at the desk remained still smiling, still waiting. I followed the guest down the west corridor. The air grew colder, the lights dimmer, the walls thicker. I felt like I was walking through a grave that had learned how to dream. And, far at the end, room 507 waited, its door pulsing slightly, wood groaning like it had lungs and a memory, and from beneath it, fingers, too many, all tapping, in rhythm, welcoming me home. The guest walked ahead of me, its gauze-wrapped body swaying like it was floating just above the floor. Its bare feet made no sound, and yet I could hear something, some weight in its steps, like chains dragging through dreams. Room 507 loomed at the end of the hallway. The door wasn't numbered in brass or painted on. It was scratched in. Deep gouges, as though something with claws, human or not, had marked it again and again, desperate to be let in or kept out. I stopped a few feet away. The guest turned around slowly, tilted its head. "You first," it said in a voice that sounded like mine, but younger. Too young. I stepped forward. The closer I got, the more the door seemed to breathe. Not open, not pulse. Breathe. The wood inhaled slowly, bulged slightly outward, then exhaled into the hallway with a soft wheeze that smelled like dust and blood. I gripped the doorknob. It was warm, almost alive. It twisted on its own before I could turn it. The door creaked open, and the first thing I noticed wasn't the room. It was the whisper, low, constant, endless, coming from everywhere at once, like wind made of murmured regrets. Room 507 looked like a hotel room frozen in grief. Old wallpaper peeling at the edges, a chandelier overhead flickering like a heartbeat out of rhythm. But the bed was perfectly made. Tucked corners, white linen, pillow indentations like someone had just been lying there, except no one was, not yet. The guest stood behind me now, inches away. "I sleep here every night," it said. "You did too." I turned. "I don't remember." It nodded slowly. "That's the point." Something buzzed in my pocket. I hadn't brought a phone, hadn't been allowed. But when I reached in, I pulled out a key card. Faded, cracked, my name printed in ghost gray ink. Night attendant, guest 507, archived. Below that, a check-in date, one I didn't recognize, and no checkout, just a word, pending. The guest walked past me and sat on the edge of the bed. Its gauze unwound slightly as it moved. What I saw beneath wasn't skin, not muscle, but paper. Its limbs were made of crumpled hotel documents, shifts, logs, guest records, all scribbled over, redacted, rewritten. One piece fluttered free. I picked it up. It was a page from the guest book. The heading read, Attendant 9, Incident Record, Self-Report. The description, Attendant attempted to flee room 507, denied by structure, resubmitted to rotation, copy assigned, reformat scheduled. I backed away, looked around the room again. Now the mirror on the far wall had changed. It showed me standing at the desk in the lobby, greeting guests, smiling, but behind me, a second me. No face, just darkness where the features should be. And in the mirror's reflection, room 507 no longer had a bed, only a door. And behind that door, scratching. Endless scratching. "Who are you really?" I asked the guest. It looked up at me and removed the last of its gauze. Its face was mine, but bloated, distorted, stitched in places where I didn't remember injuries. The lips moved without sound, just the motion of a scream stuck beneath time. Then it stood. "My shift is over. Yours begins again." The lights dimmed, and I suddenly couldn't move. My feet rooted to the floor, arms stiff, like the room was rewriting me. From the toes up, the mirror shimmered again. Now I saw the bed behind me. And in the bed, me, sleeping, mouth slightly open, twitching, dreaming. But I wasn't dreaming, I was watching. The guest, my other self, walked to the closet, opened it. Inside, hanging on a rusted hook, was a burgundy uniform, like the staff wore. But this one had no name tag, no stitching, only a mirror sewn into the chest, cracked. They took it down and held it out to me. I shook my head, tried to speak, tried to scream, but my voice was gone. They draped the uniform over my shoulders. I didn't resist, couldn't. The fabric was too heavy, too familiar, like I'd worn it for years and just forgotten. "Room 507 remembers," they whispered. "You always come back here. When you forget too much, when your copy slips, when you look too closely." They pressed something cold into my hand. The key, still warm from the desk, still burning like guilt. The mirror cracked. Not a sound, just the sensation of something fracturing in my spine. The lights went out, and in the dark, I heard breathing, my own and someone else's. Then a click. The door swung open behind me. I was in the hallway again, back outside room 507. Only this time, I was alone. The door behind me sealed shut. No sound, no air pressure shift, just gone. Replaced with smooth wall, and written across it in candle soot. One version sleeps, one version works, neither remembers. I returned to the lobby. The candles were lit again. The mirror above the desk shimmered with static. The bell dinged, and the guest book updated. Night attendant, status, restored room 507, guest confirmed. Next arrival, 3:33 a.m. I sat behind the desk, and for a moment, I forgot everything, just like the hotel wanted. 3:33 a.m. The exact second the clock hit that cursed minute, the lights above me popped. Not flickered, exploded. One by one, the bulbs cracked in sequence from the chandelier downward, sending tiny shards raining onto the marble floor. the candles snuffed out as if smothered by unseen hands. Then came the static, a soft, low hum at first, like a radio between stations. Then louder, sharper, like the sound of something screaming through a vent, but muffled by time. I tried to ring the service bell. It let out a distorted chime, followed by a whisper I could feel in my teeth. "He's early tonight." The voice was not mine, but it knew how to use it. The lobby transformed. The front desk sank half an inch as if the building exhaled. The walls cracked, not from age but from pressure, like something massive pressing inward from all sides. The floor tiles darkened with a spreading stain that smelled like ash and something older. And through the fogged glass of the front doors, I saw him. The 333 guest. He wasn't walking. He was sliding, like something being pulled across the floor by its spine. Head tilted too far to the side. Hands limp. Suit disheveled and stained with dark streaks. But it was his eyes that stopped me, because they were mine, except stretched vertically, pupil to chin, wide open and vibrating. He passed through the doors without opening them, just phased through the glass like it was a curtain of water. And with him came cold. Not just temperature, something deeper, a cold that remembered every mistake you've ever made. He stopped in front of the desk, didn't speak, just opened his mouth and breathed out static. I backed away. The guest book flipped violently to a blank page, and without a pen, without ink, new entries burned their way into the parchment. Guest, redacted, time of return, 3:33 a.m., reason for visit, unfinished symmetry. Then a new field appeared, mirror status, fractured. I didn't know what to do. No protocol had ever been clear about this one. There were no rules for the 333 guest, only warnings. And even those were always crossed out in my shift logs. All I knew was what I'd heard whispered from the vents during my second night. He leaves a copy of himself in every hotel he enters. And when the mirrors break, he can finally find his way out. The chandelier began to spin slowly, not from wind, from force. Gravity pulling sideways like the ceiling wanted to become the floor. The 333 guest lifted one hand and pointed to the mirror behind the front desk. It had cracked, not much, just a sliver down the center, but the reflection it showed was two of me, one standing, one suspended upside down, mouth open, bleeding upwards. The guest spoke then, not aloud, into my head. "I stayed here once. They promised me a morning, but the sun never comes at the Sixth Light Hotel. Only reflections." Then he stepped into the mirror. The crack widened as he passed through, but the mirror didn't shatter. Instead, it swallowed him. And now? The two reflections stared at me, one still, one smiling, and in unison they said, "A third is needed. The equation must balance." I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. The desk drawer flew open on its own. Inside, not papers, not photos, but teeth, rows of them, human, filed, stacked in neat little pyramids like trophies. One of them had a tiny gold crown. I recognized it. From my molar, except I'd never had one pulled. Had I? The intercom crackled. I hadn't even noticed the speaker system before. Now it buzzed to life with a voice like sandpaper and static. "Night attendant, confirm visual status. Guest 333 has passed mirror threshold. Install failsafe protocol. Prepare for shadow test." I didn't respond. The microphone buzzed louder, demanding something from me. Then a new line printed on the guest book. "Write down what you fear most." Quickly. My hands moved without asking me first. I grabbed the pen and scribbled one word: forgetting. The mirror pulsed. The crack sealed. The reflection returned to normal. Only one of me now, at least for the moment. 3:40 a.m. 7 minutes had passed. But the damage was done. The temperature wouldn't rise again. The candles refused to relight. And beneath the desk, the shadow of the 3:33 guest remained, stuck to me, following each movement half a second too late. I walked to the lobby window and peered out into the fog. For a split second, I saw a line of people waiting in the street. Dozens of them. Some headless, some made of glass, all with keys around their necks, and every single one of them was me. The 3:33 guest leaves copies, and now, so do I. I looked back at the guest book. One final message had been etched into the bottom of the page. When the mirror breaks 3 times, you get to choose who stays. Then beneath it, and who gets to wake up. The mirror didn't crack again that night. But something else did. The walls. At exactly 3:58 a.m., the wallpaper in the east hallway started to peel. Not from the edges, but from the center outward. A perfect circle formed in the middle of the hallway's wall, almost like a portal made of skin and damp plaster. It oozed. It pulsed. And then it opened. Not like a door, like an eye, and someone stepped out of it. I was still behind the front desk, half slumped from exhaustion, trying to keep my thoughts from spinning apart like wet paper. The figure that emerged wore a guest uniform, one I'd never seen before. Different color, blue pinstripes, 1920s cut. He was barefoot, pale, eyes wide like they'd just learned what light was, and he screamed, not out of pain, out of shock, out of the realization that he was still here. It was a dream, he cried, spinning in place. It was just a dream. I made it out. I made it to the elevator. You can't bring me back. He clutched his head, looked around in disbelief, and then locked eyes with me. How long have I been gone? He asked, stumbling forward. I opened the guest book instinctively. His name was there. Rowan Ellery, check-in, October 8th, 1927. Departure, processing. No update since. I checked the clock. 3:59 a.m. 1 hour left. I stepped out from behind the desk. Rowan, how did you leave? His eyes twitched. He didn't trust me. Didn't know if I was real. Hell, I didn't know if I was real. Then he said something strange. I fell asleep in room 109. I woke up in my bed. I had dinner. I got married. Had children. I thought it was a reward. But last night, I saw the mirror again, and when I blinked, I was standing in that wall. He pointed back to the oozing circular slit in the hallway. Now gone. Just sealed wallpaper, like nothing had ever happened. He looked like he was going to be sick. They don't let you go, he whispered. They just loan you to the outside. Until something slips. A sound you remember. A hallway that feels too long. A word no one else can pronounce. Then you're theirs again. He dropped to the floor, trembling, mumbling something about numbers, over and over. 6 floors, 6 mirrors, 6 shadows, only one real door. The elevator dinged, not at the lobby, from the roof. I didn't know the elevator could go that high. There was no 6 button inside it, only L, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the panel dinged again. Ding, ding, ding. And above the elevator, a new light blinked on. Floor 6, roof line. Rowan looked up, eyes wide. Number no. They said I was clear. They said I passed. Don't let it open. Too late. The elevator doors began to slide open. Inside, there was nothing. Just fog, thick and yellow, but beneath the fog I saw movement, small ripples, like insects skating across still water. Then, a hand reached out. It wasn't grabbing, it was offering. In its palm, a room key, silver, old, dust-covered. The number etched on it, 000. Rowan screamed again, scrambled behind the couch in the lobby like a cornered animal. "Don't take the key. If you take it, you wake up somewhere else. And they still watch you. They still feed on you." The hand didn't waver. It waited. The elevator hummed with hunger. The intercom crackled again. A familiar voice, the one from before. "Night attendant. Accept delivery. Assign guest to provisional room until sunrise. Refusal results in Dublin." That last word sent a chill through me. Doubling. I'd seen it written once, on a guest record I wasn't supposed to access. Doubling. The process by which a guest becomes staff. Doubling. The moment reflection forgets which side it's on. I stepped toward the elevator, reached for the key. My fingers grazed it, and for a flash, I wasn't in the hotel anymore. I was standing in the middle of a supermarket aisle, fluorescent lights overhead, a toddler screaming somewhere behind me. In my hand, a shopping list, but the paper bled red, and every item on it read the same thing. Check-in, 12 a.m. Check-in, 12 a.m. Check-in, 12 a.m. I yanked my hand back, and I was in the lobby again. The elevator snapped shut. The light for floor 6 dimmed out, and the lobby breathed again. The hotel had blinked. Rowan had disappeared. Only his name remained on the floor, written in wax. He woke up, but not all the way. The guest book updated. Rowan Ellery, transfer, failed room, 000, occupied mirror access, locked. I returned to the desk, sat down, looked into the mirror. It showed me, still and breathing, but now the reflection was holding something. A newborn, wrapped in a blanket stitched with hotel keys. Its mouth opened, and it cried in my voice. I blinked. The reflection returned to normal, but I didn't. Something in me had changed. Something in me had remembered. And memory here was dangerous. 4:11 a.m. The worst hour. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I started to remember. The lobby was quiet. Too quiet. Even the hum of the building had gone still, as if the walls were listening instead of breathing. The candles were out again. The mirror sat perfectly smooth, no cracks, no ripples. But behind the silence I could feel the pressure building, a kind of mental static, a weight behind the eyes, like the memory of a dream you can't place, but no wasn't yours. I opened the guest book, hesitated, but my hands moved on their own, flipped past pages of blood-inked names, burnt corners, entries in languages that smelled like mildew and fire. And there, on page 109, in small handwriting, Attendant 3, memory compromise. Recovered dangerous data. Initiated suppression. Note, if memory returns, locate mirror-born and sever link. Warning, do not trust the reflection once it begins to weep. I touched the edge of the page, felt a pulse, not imagined, a literal heartbeat in the paper. I dropped it instantly, backed away, but the mirror was already reacting. A single tear began to run down my reflection's cheek. Not mine, just the reflection's. It slid down the glass like oil, leaving behind a faint trail that didn't evaporate. And when it hit the bottom edge of the mirror, the desk shook. The drawers all flew open, papers flew out, dozens, maybe hundreds, of fragments, photos, invoices, records, and postcards. Some were addressed to me, others to variations of my name I didn't recognize, each written in the same crooked, shaky hand. Still here. Still me. Still not allowed to leave. One postcard had a Polaroid stapled to it, a picture of me as a child, sitting on a red tricycle outside a house I don't remember living in. The date in the corner, August 1993. The back of the photo simply read, "Where you forgot," "Where the hotel began," and then a final phrase scratched in, "Ask the basement." The moment I read those words, a low groan echoed from beneath the floor. Wood bent beneath me like something shifting just below the marble. I looked at the desk again. The guest book had flipped itself open to a new page. Access request. Logged, sublevel 1, basement access, attendant status, verified key reassignment in progress. Then the lights went out, all at once. Only the mirror glowed now, its surface rippling slightly like it was breathing through me. The elevator dinged, but not from the shaft, from beneath the floor. A panel behind the desk slid open, revealing a staircase that had never existed before. It led down. No handrails, just concrete steps slick with condensation and the faint smell of wet leaves and ink. At the top of the stairwell, a rusted plaque, "Basement, Forgetting Floor. Where the guests you remember go to disappear." I shouldn't have gone down. Everything in my chest screamed not to, but my feet were already moving. One step, then another. And the further down I went, the more the memories came back. Not mine, others, flooding into my head like seawater through cracks in a ship. A woman sobbing for her husband who never checked out. A bellhop who walked into the mirror during a power outage and never came back right. A child who laughed too loud in the West Wing and now lives in the wallpaper. Each memory had a taste, a smell, a texture. Some sticky, some alive. The bottom of the staircase ended in a red hallway lit by dim bulbs that flickered in a stuttered heartbeat. Each wall had paintings of me in different roles: bellhop, chef, concierge, janitor, security. Some were smiling, some were headless. Each one held a key. Each one had my face, but not my eyes. And beneath each painting, a nameplate. Attendant 1, Attendant 2, Attendant 3, I found mine. Attendant 9. The plaque was cracked. Underneath it, someone had scratched in, "Doesn't remember yet." I reached the end of the hallway and found a door labeled Memory Vault. A whisper came from behind it. Software familiar. "Come inside and we'll give it back. Just one. Just the important one. Just enough to feel whole again." The key around my neck lifted on its own, floated toward the lock. I tried to pull back, but my hand opened the door before my mind could protest. Inside was a single hospital bed, and strapped to it, me, not another version, not a copy, me. Hair buzzed short, skin pale, eyes closed, hooked to tubes and wires that vanished into the floor. Above the bed, a glowing sign, Attendant 9, status, recovery incomplete. I staggered forward, put my hand on the figure's shoulder, warm, breathing, dreaming. The mirror on the far wall rippled. It showed me standing behind the desk again. This time, I wasn't blinking, just smiling, too wide, too empty, and whispering to every new guest as they entered. Just a few nights. Just a quick stay. You'll forget by morning. I turned back to the version of me in the bed and whispered one word. "Why?" The figure's mouth twitched, and it answered without opening its eyes. "Because you volunteered. Because forgetting hurts less than remembering. Because something in you wanted this." Behind me, the door sealed shut, and I knew if I stayed a second longer, I would forget again. The memory vault door creaked, but not from the outside, from the inside. The room shifted around me. The hospital bed sank slowly into the floor, dragging its tangle of wires and the sleeping version of myself with it. The tubes slithered like worms, burrowing deep into the tile, and the lights flickered out one by one, left to right, like closing eyes. I turned to the door. It was gone, replaced by a blank wall covered in carvings I hadn't noticed before, tally marks, hundreds, thousands, all scratched with something desperate. I counted them before I realized I'd started. 97 rows of 66 marks, and beneath them, a phrase etched in ragged gouges: "The shift ends when you stop looking for the exit." A low hum began to vibrate the room, the kind that made your fillings buzz and your stomach twist. The mirror rippled again. It showed me not behind the desk, not in the lobby, but outside the hotel, standing on the street corner from my first night, Ashwood and Holloway. Except it wasn't empty now. It was full of me, dozens of me, each frozen in different poses, one on his knees, screaming, one pacing in frantic circles, one standing perfectly still, holding a sign that read, "Don't apply." The me inside the mirror, my reflection, turned slowly toward the camera, raised a finger to its lips, and whispered, "Shh." The hum grew louder. I backed into the wall trying to find some way out. That's when I saw it. A seam, not a door, not a panel, just a crack in the carvings, barely visible but pulsing faintly with light. I pressed my palm to it, and the wall peeled open. On the other side was a corridor, tall, narrow. The walls were all mirrors, not hung, built from glass. Each step I took showed me a different version of myself, some smiling, some crying, some bleeding from the eyes, but all of them walking in opposite directions, toward me. The corridor stretched like taffy. I ran. My footsteps didn't echo. Instead, the mirrors echoed voices. Shift never ends. You volunteered. You forgot on purpose. No one forced you. And beneath the voices, louder, came a ticking. Not from a clock, from a heartbeat. Mine. Faster now, trying to keep up. At the end of the corridor, a circular room. Walls of gold leaf wallpaper and 7 doors, each numbered wrong. 113, 000, 404, B1, 7R, null, and a blank one. No handle, just a word engraved in its surface: rewind. The ticking stopped. I stood in front of the rewind door. It began to glow faintly, and I heard something behind it. My own voice. "Hello, welcome to the 6th Light Hotel. Just need your signature in the book." It repeated, over and over, like a recording loop. I reached for the door, felt it tremble beneath my hand. Cold glass, warm wood, and something alive under both. When I touched it, a surge of images blasted through me, a cascade of forgotten nights. Not one, not dozens, but hundreds. I'd worked here before, so many times in so many roles, each one ending the same way, with me behind the desk, or beneath it, or split between both. The hotel never asked me to stay. It just waited until I forgot that I had left. I pulled back from the door, looked around the room. Every door pulsed now, each whispering something different. From 404, static. From B1, a child's laughter. From 7R, the grinding of teeth. From null, silence so deep I heard my own blood moving, but it was the blank door that called the loudest. Its whisper wasn't sound, it was feeling, and I knew this was the only one that would take me somewhere real, or somewhere I had once been. I reached for it, and just before I touched the surface, the light snapped out. Total darkness. only the sensation of my fingers brushing wood. And then the door opened inward. I stepped through and immediately felt lighter, not physically, mentally, as if some part of the hotel had released its grip on a sliver of my brain. I stumbled forward and realized I was back in the lobby, at least a version of it. It was cleaner, brighter. Music played softly from the gramophone in the corner, and behind the desk, a young woman in uniform, smiling nervously. She looked up as I approached. "Hi," she said, flipping through the guest book. "You're my relief, right?" I didn't speak. She tilted her head. "I'm on hour 6. You must be the next shift." My voice cracked. "How long have you been here?" She smiled. "Just the one night," she said. "But the desk told me something weird. It said I'll remember everything when I see myself." Her eyes widened. She looked at me again, truly saw me. "Oh, then, it's you." The gramophone warped, the music slowed, candles turned black, and the mirror behind her cracked once. She whispered, "No one ever told me the truth," and disappeared, like smoke. I stood behind the desk again, the guest book open, the bell silent, and this time, no key on my neck, only a blank tag pinned to my shirt, and a new entry forming in the book, Attendant 10, pending integration. Next arrival, 4:44 a.m., 4:44 a.m. The mirror hadn't cracked again. Not yet, but the reflection had changed. I now stood behind the desk with my eyes closed, breathing slowly, calmly. The candlelight danced across the glass, but the reflection never blinked. And as I stared, a word began to etch itself in the frost on the inside of the mirror. Host. The elevator doors opened on their own, but no bell rang, no chime, just the metallic hiss of the gears groaning like the lift hadn't moved in centuries. Inside, the lights were out, but something was in there, something watching. I didn't move, but the guest book did. It flipped violently to a page stained dark red, and there, burned into the parchment as though seared with a branding iron. Guest, Mr. Caro. Check in. Time, 4:44 a.m. Room, N.A. departure. Decline notes. Do not assign. The air in the lobby thickened instantly. It pressed against my chest like invisible water, like I was standing deep under sea and gravity had forgotten me. The elevator groaned again, and out stepped Mr. Caro. He didn't look like a guest, didn't look like a person. He wore a black overcoat that trailed behind him even when he stopped walking. His face was smooth, blank, like clay before it's sculpted. But he had a mouth, and that mouth was smiling, wider than it should have. Too many teeth, all of them the same size. He didn't approach the desk, didn't look at me. He walked to the center of the lobby and sat down on the couch, crossed his legs, hands folded, as if he'd been waiting for this moment forever. Then he said, in a voice that didn't echo properly, "No room for me, is there? No bed, no copy, no number. That's what makes me different." I swallowed hard. "You're not on the list," I said. He grinned wider. "That's because I checked in before the hotel had walls." I stepped back behind the desk, pressed the service lock button. The elevator groaned shut behind him, but the light for floor 6 started blinking again. Faster, erratic. Mr. Caro tilted his head. "You're afraid of me. They told you to be. But I'm not the one who wrote the rules. I'm just the one who remembers them all." The candles near him flickered blue. The gramophone stopped. The mirror fogged over completely. And then, faintly, I heard it again, knocking from inside the mirror. Mr. Caro reached into his coat, pulled out something small. He placed it on the lobby coffee table. Even from here, I recognized it instantly. A name tag. Mine. Charred around the edges, and beneath my name, scrawled in dripping ink. First one to forget. He leaned back, hands resting in his lap. This place only works because someone like you stays behind the desk. The others come and go. They suffer, they wake, they get to believe in escape. But not you. You're the anchor. I shook my head. You're not supposed to be here. He chuckled. A deep, rattling sound like a bone rolling across tile. I never left. I was buried in the foundation, under the lobby tiles, under every name in the guest book. Then he stood, and as he did, his shadow stretched too far. It reached the desk, slid over the top, pooled beneath my feet like oil with a heartbeat. The guest book slammed shut, and on the cover, one word appeared in glowing letters: rewrite. Mr. Caro's voice filled the lobby, though his mouth no longer moved. You want out? Then break the book. Shatter it, tear the pages, burn your name. But know this, if you do, someone else takes your place. Someone real. Someone undeserving. He stepped back into the center of the room, spread his arms, waited, and for the first time I realized he wanted me to choose. I looked down. The guest book trembled beneath my hands. Flashes hit my eyes like lightning. My life before this, my mother's voice, the way my name sounded at graduation, the street where I met her, the apartment, the last meal I had before I was hired, the interview, the smile, the lie, the contract I never read, and then silence. The guest book cracked, the spine splitting slightly. It wasn't just a ledger, it was a contract, and my name had been written in long before I signed it. I looked up. Mr. Caro's smile faded. For the first time, he looked worried. He took a step forward. Careful now, he whispered. You tear the wrong page and you don't forget anymore. You remember? My fingers hovered above the cover, and in that moment, the mirror behind me shattered. No sound, no warning, just silence given way to infinite shards, and in every piece, a different version of me stared back, screaming, laughing, sleeping, rotting, running, begging, choosing, all of them reaching out toward me, waiting to see what I'd do. I opened the guest book one last time. My name was glowing. The ink shimmered like fireflies on a lake. And beneath it, something new had appeared. Do you consent to exit? Yes. No. Other Mr. Caro laughed softly. Choose wisely, little anchor. Once the book knows, the hotel obeys. The lobby stood still, frozen in that impossible breath between night and memory. I hovered over the glowing page in the guest book. My name pulsed, an echo of something ancient, or maybe something I'd only just written. The three options shimmered beneath it like false promises. Yes. No. Other Mr. Caro stood near the couch, coat hanging off his frame like shadows stitched to flesh. His mouth didn't smile anymore, but his eyes did. You think it's a riddle, he said softly. It isn't. The book doesn't care what you pick, only that you choose. That's how it eats. I touched the pen. It felt warm, familiar, like something I'd held in another life, maybe even before the hotel, before the mirrors, before the forgetting. I reached toward the box next to yes, and something inside me tightened, like a thread pulling taut between my ribs. Images flooded my vision. Me, waking up in a hospital bed, nurses speaking in muffled voices, my mother crying at the edge of the room, a priest I'd never met reading something from a clipboard, and a flat line on a monitor that didn't match the beat in my chest. I pulled the pen back. The thread loosened. Mr. Caro tilted his head, amused. "You died somewhere," he said. "Didn't you?" "Not all the way, just enough to fall through the cracks. The sixth light finds people like that." He stepped closer, voice velvet and venom. "You weren't tricked into coming here. You wandered in, begging to forget. And now you're angry the price feels unfair." The mirror behind me had reformed, barely, just a sliver held together by hairline fractures. In the reflection, I wasn't at the desk. I was in a motel room, sleeping, alone, TV flickering static, a note in my hand. I strained to read it in the glass and made out 5 words. "You said yes to this." The pen trembled between my fingers. I looked down at the options again. Yes, no, other. What did other mean? Mr. Caro chuckled. "You want to break the loop? You think other is a magic door?" He stepped beside the desk and placed a pale, too long hand on the counter. "It's not. It's just a way of saying you still don't understand the rules." Then he leaned close. His breath didn't smell like anything. That was the worst part. No decay, no heat, no rot, just nothing. Pick yes, and you wake up, maybe. Pick no, and you stay, definitely. Pick other, and you take my job. My pulse surged, not in fear, in clarity. It made sense now. That's how Caro got here. Someone chose other before me, and someone before them. This was the system, a relay race of memory loss and consent, strung together by centuries of almost dead volunteers trying to undo something they once chose. I took the pen, closed my eyes, let the building's heartbeat guide my hand, and marked other. The ink flared golden, then darkened into red. The book snapped shut like a jaw clamping down. The air shifted instantly, denser, tighter. Caro stepped back, hissing through his 2 white teeth. "Wrong move, but predictable. You're going to wish you chose sleep." The desk beneath me began to transform. The wood melted into bone. The drawers dissolved into mouths. The surface grew soft, like muscle under skin. A new nameplate rose from the marrow. Attendant 0, not a number, a reset. My uniform changed. The patch on my chest rewove itself, from night attendant to host. The candlelight dimmed into black embers. The bell rusted before my eyes, and the guest book opened one more time. Only now, it didn't list guests. It listed keys. Keys that had names, real names, mine included. Caro was gone. The couch where he'd sat was dust. The mirror cracked again. The page inside the guest book flipped on its own. Cycle 9 complete. New anchor installed. Host integrated. Next candidate, 5:13 a.m. I couldn't feel my fingertips. I couldn't remember what they were for. The hotel was now inside me, its breath filling my lungs, its pulse syncing with mine, its doors creaking in time with my blinking eyes. One final message wrote itself across the desk in dripping ink. Welcome back. I was no longer part of the hotel. I was the hotel, and the front doors creaked open just as a new silhouette stepped inside. Blurry, unsteady, confused, clutching a resume and an envelope marked urgent, employment contract enclosed. He looked up at me, smiled nervously. "Hi, sorry, I think I'm late for the night shift." And before I could stop myself, before I could remember anything else, I returned the smile, rang the bell once, and said the words I had practiced across 100 lifetimes. "Welcome to the Sixth Light Hotel. We've been expecting you, 5:13 a.m. The guest was already inside before the door finished opening. He didn't walk, he appeared, like a bad edit in a film reel. One moment, nothing. The next, a man in a tailored gray suit with no face at all. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth skin-toned emptiness from brow to chin. And yet, I felt him smiling. He approached the desk, soundless. The new brass key on the lanyard around my neck began to vibrate. It wasn't fear I felt, it was recognition. "You remember me," the man said. He didn't speak out loud. The words slid directly into my head, cold and wet like a silver eel. I nodded slowly, though I couldn't place why. "You were here before," I whispered. He cocked his head, not as a gesture of confusion, but approval. The guest book flipped open violently, skipping dozens of pages until it landed on a spread that had been burned black along the edges. The paper bled ink as a name wrote itself across the center in looping, painful script. Guest, classified, alias, the blank caller. Check-in, unknown, departure, denied, multiple, status, indeterminate reflection. The candles began to gutter, one by one, snuffed by an invisible wind that blew only inward. The lobby shrank around me. Not literally, but psychologically. It felt like I was being crushed into a smaller and smaller space in my own mind. "You know what I want," the faceless man said again. "You've always known." He reached into his suit jacket and removed something wrapped in cloth. He placed it on the desk between us with reverence. I unwrapped it, and nearly collapsed. It was a photograph of me, standing in the hotel lobby. Except, I wasn't alone. There was another me behind the desk, smiling warmly. And beside me, a woman, her face blurred, as if the camera refused to remember her. But I knew, somehow, I loved her. I knew that smile, that weight on my shoulder, that absence I'd never been able to explain. The guest, the blank caller, tapped the photo gently. This was real. You were almost free, until you heard the message. The mirror behind me cracked again. A third fracture now. One more and it would shatter. From the gramophone in the corner, a whisper began to play. A voice recording, warped and stuttering, like an old tape looped too many times. "Don't answer the phone. Don't answer. Don't." The message looped, growing quieter each time until it was a rasp. Then silence. Then the phone rang. Not the one on the desk. The red rotary phone behind the guest book. The one I'd been told never to touch. It hadn't rung since I arrived. Not until now. The blank caller slowly lifted his hand and pointed. "That's your voice on the tape. You called yourself. You pulled yourself back in." My hands were shaking. "Why?" I whispered. He leaned in close. I still couldn't see a face, but I could feel a grin wide enough to hurt. "Because you missed her. Because she left. Because you wanted to remember." I stared at the photo again. The hotel around us had begun to bleed. The walls wept black tears. The chandelier groaned above like bones under pressure. The mirror pulsed. 3 fractures now jagged across the surface. And then, the phone rang again, louder, this time from inside my head. I reached for it. The blank caller placed a finger on my hand. "If you answer, you trade places with the voice. You become the memory calling out, not the one who remembers." The guest book flipped closed with a slam, and carved itself shut with black wire spiraling through the binding like barbed vines. The tag on my uniform began to peel off. Underneath, not my name, not a number, just 3 letters scorched into the fabric, EXO. The hotel was trying to eject me, or maybe it was giving me a chance, a test. The phone rang a 3rd time, and I picked it up. Dead air. Then, my voice. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. I've found the exit, but it cost me everything. Don't stay for her. She's not in here anymore. She never was. Click. I dropped the phone, turned to the mirror. The blank caller stood behind me now, reflected perfectly, even without a face. He raised his hand and tapped the mirror once, a sound like a church bell made of ice. The glass cracked for the fourth time, and a new line appeared on the desk, etched in glowing ink. One more fracture, and you wake up somewhere worse. The guest vanished. The photo burned. The phone melted into rusted plastic, and I sat behind the desk once more, alone, afraid, and slightly more awake than I was meant to be. 5:27 a.m. The mirror was sick. That's the only way I can describe it. It pulsed now. Not light, but something deeper, like a migraine behind glass. The cracks danced like veins across its surface, each one humming in time with my heartbeat. 4 fractures, one away. Just one more, and everything I wasn't supposed to remember would bleed out. The hotel knew. It rearranged itself accordingly. The lights flickered. The desk split down the center like a wishbone. The chandeliers groaned and dropped 1 inch, as if the ceiling were bowing to something older than gravity. And the guest book was gone. In its place, a mirror slab, perfectly flat, obsidian black, and warm to the touch. When I looked into it, it didn't show me, it showed her, the blurred woman from the photograph. This time, clearer. Still no face, but I could see her hands trembling. One held a key. The other clutched her belly. "Who are you?" I whispered, and the mirror answered in fogged script. "You named me once. Then you left me here. Do you still want out?" The letters bled as they formed, then dripped away. The room behind the desk stretched outward. Bookshelves emerged from the walls, spinning slowly, filled with records I didn't recognize, but felt. One file cabinet slid open on its own. Folders began to fly out in a whirlwind, spiraling around me like paper birds. I reached for one at random. Inside, a parking ticket from a town I'd never lived in. A photograph of me at 8 years old, missing a front tooth, crying on a park bench. A hospital wristband marked "Discharged, AMA." A final page. Subject voluntarily submitted to memory displacement program. Recovery window 6 hours before cognitive lockout. Status 5:27 a.m. Critical. I dropped the folder. The clock above the elevator was ticking backward now. Time rewinding. The gramophone played in reverse, violin notes turning into shrieks. And then the floor bent, not caved, bent like rubber. The tiles stretched and reshaped. I was no longer behind a desk. I stood in a hallway, long, narrow, familiar. The numbers on the doors didn't make sense. Room 7, room 13, room 000, room, U-room, stop, room 559, all pulsing with faint red light under their thresholds. The door marked U opened first. I stepped toward it without thinking. Inside, a hotel room frozen in grief, wallpaper peeled, bed untouched, and at the center, a man hanging from the ceiling fan by a belt. Me. I turned to run. The hallway warped behind me. The door slammed shut. Room stop swung open next. Inside, a woman, crying, face in her hands, alone on the bed. Beside her, a photo album filled with black pages. One page flickered as I approached. Words began to form. "You said you'd remember. You promised. You always choose the hotel." The next door, room 000, pulled itself open, and from the shadows inside, Caro's voice returned. This is the part they always forget. The thing they trade for comfort. Their pain. A cold hand reached out, held a syringe filled with light. I took a step back. The hallway spasmed again. Then, Everything stopped. All the lights went out. Only the mirror behind me glowed. 4 cracks. Now a 5th began to crawl its way from the bottom corner like a spider made of truth. And in the glass, for the first time, I saw her. Truly. Brown eyes, scar above her left eyebrow, the green coat I bought her for Christmas, the one she wore when the car hit the black ice. She looked at me and said, not with her mouth, but with her presence, "You weren't supposed to follow me. I was gone. You stayed. But you didn't let go." The mirror throbbed and the room began to fracture. Not the walls, the story, my identity, my name, my timeline, all of it stuttering like a dying reel of film. "Then who am I?" I whispered. She stepped forward, pressed her palm to the other side of the mirror. "You're the one who wouldn't wake up." And that's when the final crack split the mirror in half. Not a shatter, not a break, but a birth. The reflection screamed. Not sound, emotion. Centuries of memory, grief, rage, loneliness, and hope poured out in one silent howl, and the room folded inward, crushing the walls down like paper. The lights blew out, the music died, the floor disappeared, and I was falling. Down, down, into the 6th light, into the truth, into whatever came next. I hit the floor hard, not metaphorically, literally. I slammed into something cold and wet, like marble soaked in blood that had long since dried to rust. My scream echoed through nothing, a void disguised as a room. Everything was black, except for a dim blue light pulsing in the distance like a dying heartbeat. My lungs burned. My mouth was dry. But I remembered everything. Her name was Elena, the woman in the green coat, the smile in the photograph, the blur in the mirror, the shadow behind every memory I'd tried to outrun. She had been my fiancé. We were supposed to leave town the night of the storm. We never did. The ice hit, the truck spun, she died on impact, and I had survived. But only the physical parts. They'd kept me in a hospital for 3 months. I remembered that now. The tubes, the lights, the way the doctors spoke in whispers just outside the door. I'd stopped speaking after the funeral, stopped eating, stopped being, until someone came, a man in a dark coat with a contract and a promise. "We can help you forget. You don't have to wake up with this pain again. Just sign here." And I did. The blue light grew brighter now, closer, and with it came a shape. It moved like a person, but twitched like a puppet in the hands of a nervous god. Limbs too fluid, steps too smooth. When it got close enough, I saw it wasn't a person at all. It was me, or a version of me, clad in the same uniform I wore on my first night behind the front desk, smiling, vacant, eyes hollow like twin exit wounds. "You made it further than most," it said, cracked the mirror, remembered the truth. It knelt beside me. Its fingers brushed mine, numb and wet like cloth left in rainwater. "But the hotel still owns your sleep. And if you dream here long enough, you belong here." Behind it, the floor began to rise, not up, but around, like we stood in the center of a massive clock and the hour hand was drawing a circle in reality. Stone columns grew upward, forming a rotunda of memory. And between each pillar, a screen, playing loops of me crying into my hands after the funeral, me signing the waiver in the psych ward, me stepping into the 6th Light Hotel for the first time, me smiling as I took the uniform, me forgetting her name. The loop paused there, her name blurred out, replaced with static. The other version of me clapped its hands slowly, mocking. "You wanted peace? You asked for numbness. You begged to unbecome. Now that you're almost whole, what will you do with the pain you reclaimed?" I stood up. My knees shook, but I stood. The rotunda flickered. The version of me began to crack, hairline fractures running down its cheeks like porcelain under pressure. "I'll carry it," I said. "For her, for me. Even if it breaks me." Its smile widened, its eyes bled. Then it stepped back and whispered one final word. Then wake. Everything vanished. The rotunda imploded like a building collapsing inward. The floor disappeared beneath my feet again. I braced for the fall. But this time, there wasn't one. Just a heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. And I was lying in a bed. A real one. Not a hospital cot. Not a cursed room. Not a mirrored loop. Just a bed. Crumpled sheets. Sunlight trying to fight its way through a curtain I hadn't drawn in weeks. I sat up slowly. The walls didn't bleed. The air didn't whisper. My breath fogged against the cold morning air. I was out, back, returned, but not restored, because something else was there too. I turned to my nightstand, and there it was, a small black key, unlabeled, but I knew what it unlocked. The hotel always leaves you a door, just in case. There was also a note, in handwriting I didn't recognize, yet somehow did. "The sixth light never forces anyone to stay. We just wait for you to need us again." Underneath it, scrawled in haste, "P.S. The mirror only cracks once in this world. Be careful what you try to remember." I stood up, wobbled to the window, opened the curtain. Outside, the world looked the same. Cars passed, neighbors walked their dogs, snow still lingered on the sidewalks, but in the reflection of the glass, there were 5 cracks, just faint, but there, waiting. I blinked and they were gone, but the memory wasn't, and now I had to choose what to do with it. 5:41 a.m. The world looked real, felt real, sounded real, but something was off. The air buzzed faintly, too faint for a refrigerator hum, too constant for tinnitus, a frequency just beneath consciousness, like the memory of a scream held in your jaw. I moved through my apartment on autopilot. Every corner, every object was exactly where I left it, but that was the problem. Exactly where I left it. The coffee pot still had yesterday's grounds. The book on the couch was still open to page 216, like it had waited centuries for me. My phone, untouched, read, "No missed calls, no texts," and yet I remembered receiving a call before. "Do you want out? Do you want peace? Sign here." But I'd already signed once. I touched the key on the nightstand. It vibrated in my palm like a nervous heart. The same black metal, unlabeled, but heavy, real. I should have thrown it away. I should have flushed it, buried it, melted it. But instead, I put it in my pocket. The day passed like a dream, struggling to stay awake. I walked, ate, watched static on the TV pretending to be the news. But every reflection I passed, windows, screens, doorknobs, held something strange. The lobby. Faint, distorted, but it was there. The front desk, the bell, the chandelier, still swaying as if it had just stopped spinning, and someone behind the desk. Not me, but a version of me with a name tag I couldn't read. When night came, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The mirror in my bathroom had 3 cracks now. 3. One for each memory I'd reclaimed. Elena's name. The contract. The truth about the other me. I covered the glass with a towel. But it didn't matter. Because at 12 a.m. sharp, I heard the bell. Not in my apartment. In my head. The sixth light had found a new entrance, and I was the doorman now. I blacked out. No warning, no slipping. One moment, I was gripping the edge of the sink. The next, I was standing in the hotel lobby. Again, same velvet carpet, same marble floor, same book on the desk. Except now, the book was open to a new page. Attendant 0, recovery status unstable. Next shift begins at REM. Next guest, already inside. I backed away, but the floor beneath me moved like a treadmill of memories, pushing me forward, forcing me behind the desk again. And waiting for me like a loyal dog was the mirror. Not cracked, but empty. No reflection, no me. Just the lobby looking back at me, vacant and timeless. And then, he stepped into view, the man in the mirror. Tall, pale, dressed like me, but older, eyes sunken, face drawn tight with knowledge he hadn't asked for. He didn't speak. He just placed a hand on the other side of the mirror, and slowly, I placed mine against his. Our fingers matched. Our pulse synced. And with a breath like vacuum-sealed air being released, he spoke. I was the last one to leave. And now, I'm your guest. He smiled, a broken thing, more teeth than comfort. I remember what comes next. And so will you. The mirror rippled, like water hit by sound. And suddenly, the lobby changed. Flickered, stuttered. Images blinked in and out, like a slideshow of all the times I'd been here. Me in different clothes, different years, different versions of this hotel, sometimes with other guests, sometimes alone, sometimes dead, and then a final scene, a hallway, endless, every door marked with my name, and behind each one, a moment I'd tried to forget. The man in the mirror leaned forward and said something I'll never unhear. You didn't escape. You rebooted, but the code still remembers you. He pulled away, and the mirror began to fracture again. This time, not with cracks, but with words. Dozens of phrases carved across the glass like frostbite script. Do you remember yet? She's not waiting anymore. You stayed too long. No exits, only reruns. The mirror shook. The man on the other side began to smile, wider than human. His mouth split up toward his ears. His hands cracked backwards, and he began to climb through. Not step, climb. Like a spider dragging itself through broken glass, I ran. Down the hallway, past the elevator, past the room doors that whispered my name as I passed. But no matter how far I ran, the front desk was always just around the next corner, looping, resetting, glitching. I was the man in the mirror now, and the guest was me. 5:52 a.m. The hotel had stopped pretending. No more illusions of normalcy. No more vague loops or soft whispers in the wallpaper. No more guests with curious names and blurred faces. Now, it was just me, everywhere, behind every door, inside every reflection, and seated quietly in the lobby chairs, flipping through scorched magazines, waiting for me to approach. Some were younger, college-age me with a chipped tooth and a borrowed tie. One wore scrubs, a hospital bracelet peeking from beneath the cuff, lip trembling. Another, too thin, eyes red, sat in the corner, staring at the mirror like it owed him an answer. One stood in front of the fireplace with hands bloodied and trembling, whispering, I never meant to remember. They made me. I just wanted her back. I tried to speak, but my voice was gone, or worse, split. 1,000 mouths saying 1,000 regrets all at once inside my skull. The lobby began to twist. Not physically, chronologically. The candles flickered backward. The gramophone reversed its tune into what sounded like a child crying. The chandelier ticked in place like a pendulum without time. And the walls began to change. Portraits appeared, one by one, framed in black glass, each one depicting me at different stages of forgetting, sleeping in room 404, screaming inside the elevator shaft, kneeling behind the front desk, burning my own file, wearing the host uniform, shaking hands with someone who had no hands at all. Above the portraits, a carved plaque, "The many who stayed." I turned toward the front desk, and I saw him again. The man from the mirror, or rather, the one I would become. He was seated now, patiently scribbling something into the guest book. As I stepped closer, he spoke without looking up. "You're not supposed to be awake right now. You were supposed to forget one more time. Then we would have switched clean." I walked around the desk and looked at the page. He was writing in my handwriting. Letter by letter. Attendant 0. Cycle restarting memory lock. Engaged next entry point, room U. "What if I don't let it restart?" I asked. He looked up, eyes hollow, skin stretched like wax too close to a flame. "Then you'll have to live with it. All of it." He stood and placed the pen in my hand. It was wet, not with ink, with tears. The walls trembled, the lights dimmed, and all the other versions of me began to rise from their chairs. Each moved differently, some limping, some twitching, some walking backward. But they all approached the desk, slow, deliberate, carrying pieces of the hotel with them, a room key without a number, a cracked teacup filled with teeth, a guest ledger with a single name repeated over and over, mine. The man in the mirror, my final self, nodded once and said, "This is the debt. Not the forgetting, the remembering. You wanted peace, but peace costs the truth." He stepped backward into the mirror again, his body melting into glass, and the final crack reappeared. Just one, perfect, sharp, dead center. The lobby began to fill with fog, not mist, not vapor, but memory. Every object I had suppressed, every detail I had wiped, every face I had blurred, they all came back now, in reverse. Elena stepping out of the elevator holding a hospital file. Me at the funeral, reaching for a casket that had already been buried. The contract glowing red before I signed it. The tape recorder whispering, "Choose other, choose peace, choose numb." And a final image, myself, not broken, not scared, just tired, looking into a mirror, waiting for someone to take the shift. I blinked and I was seated behind the desk. Everyone else gone. No more other selves, no man in the mirror, no Elena, just a candle burning low and a clock that read 5:59 a.m. The guest book in front of me flipped one last page, a blank spread, and then the words appeared. "You remembered. Now choose what to do with it." There was a single pen, a final box, not marked yes, not no, not other, just stay awake. I hovered my hand above the paper. The lobby grew still. The sixth light waited, breathing, listening, not demanding, just ready. 6 a.m. The bell didn't ring, the clock didn't chime, no curtains were drawn to let the light in. And yet, I knew the hour had arrived, like the final breath before waking, or the last word of a dream before it folds in on itself. The lobby was still, the air was thick, and the guest book was open in front of me, waiting. The box on the page glowed faintly. Stay awake. Not a command, not a question, just a permission, a chance to make the kind of choice that sticks, not one that resets, not one that rewinds, not one whispered by the hotel's many mouths, but mine. I looked around. Everything was where it always was, the chandelier above, the candle flickering beside the desk, the mirror, reassembled and still cracked, reflecting a version of me that didn't blink. The gramophone no longer played music. It whispered, tick, tock, stay or not. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was poised, held on the edge of something sacred and dangerous. If I checked that box, what would happen? Would I leave the hotel? Would I finally wake up in a hospital, blinking up at fluorescent lights and realizing the nightmare was only a coma? Or would I wake up somewhere worse? I stood up from the desk. The floor didn't creak, the pages didn't flutter, but the walls exhaled, long and slow, as if the hotel itself was preparing, bracing, maybe even hoping. I walked toward the mirror, looked at my reflection. He looked back, no longer blank, no longer mirrored, just me, whole but afraid. "If I leave," I whispered, "what happens to you?" The reflection smiled softly, sadly. "I am you. But I was made from forgetting. If you stay awake, I stop existing." A pause. "But that's okay. You're ready now." I closed my eyes, breathed in the scent of the hotel one last time. Ash, lavender, wet carpet, and something older, like burnt paper and tears. Then I returned to the desk, took the pen. It felt lighter now, cool like morning dew, and I checked the box. Stay awake. The book didn't close. It evaporated, turned to dust midair and scattered across the marble floor like ash in reverse. The candle flared. The mirror shattered. But this time into light. Every crack became a beam. Every beam became a doorway. And every doorway revealed something I had buried. Elena's smile, her voice in the wind, my hands holding hers as we planned our escape. The accident, the cold, the crash, the choice, the loss, the grief that followed like a shadow I thought I could amputate. But now, I held it close, and for the first time, it didn't burn. I stepped into the light and found myself home. Not metaphorical, not imagined, my real apartment. Sunlight poured in through the windows, birds chirped outside, coffee bubbled from the machine I hadn't touched in weeks. The TV hummed quietly, static replaced by morning cartoons. Everything was normal, painfully so. I looked down at my hands, still shaking, but alive, present, real. There was a knock at the door. Not the elevator chime, not the bell, a simple knock. I opened it, expecting, what? A guest? A shadow? Another version of myself? But it was just a courier, confused, holding a clipboard. "Package for, you," he said. I signed. He handed me a small box. No return label, no markings. I brought it inside, opened it slowly. Inside, a single object, a hotel key, black, glossy, unlabeled, but this time with a note, in her handwriting. I knew it instantly. "You found your way back. You stayed awake. I'm proud of you." And beneath that, "You can keep the key if you want, but you don't need it anymore." I smiled through tears, set the key down on the windowsill. The morning sun hit it just right, casting a long, thin shadow across the room, like a doorway, waiting, but only if I ever needed it again. Behind me, the clock struck 6:01 a.m. No bells, no whispers, no traps, just time, moving forward. And me, still here, still whole, still awake.